The Democratic Party seems to be passing the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris as their 2024 nominee, but some are calling this move anti-democratic. Let's hear what 2024 independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had to say.
If the Democrats do what I suspect they're going to do, which is to anoint Kamala Harris, a vice president who is monumentally unpopular within her own party, but they're doing it because it's the easiest way to hold on to the money. It's a cabal that is choosing the same way the Soviet Union did. Russia has elections. Vladimir Putin wins with 88% of the vote because he controls who can be his opponents. And he controls the media. And the same is true now of our political parties in this country.
He's not the only one making that point. Journalist Michael Shellenberger, who's often on our show, also not on board with the Democrats' latest move.
Nobody could watch the events of the last few weeks and believe that the Democratic Party is democratic. It's a party controlled by the media, donors, and the deep state. However one feels about the GOP, the same can't be said for Republicans. Republican voters rejected their own party leaders, donors, and the foreign policy establishment to nominate Trump for president in 2016. This is the third time in 3 presidential elections that Democratic Party elites have subverted democracy to choose a presidential candidate.
So I do think there is something to this argument. The issue is the process to pick Joe Biden again, to re-nominate Joe Biden for the presidency this cycle was not very democratic itself because they didn't hold actual debates. They did not run competitive primary contests. They didn't give Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., when he was actually in the party, any chance. The attitude of party leaders was it's going to be a coronation for Biden because he's the incumbent president, and our policy is, when you're the incumbent, you're not supposed to face a real, genuine primary challenge. That's what people like Simone Sanders said on TV every time she was asked, no, Joe Biden will be the nominee because he wants to be, and he's already the president, so we're not doing a real process. So there wasn't a democratic process to arrive at him again. So I get that. So the process to pick him was not very democratic, and now the process to unpick him has also not been particularly democratic in my view, because this is just the voice of the media and of party elites and also the wealthy donor class saying if Joe Biden remains the nominee, we're all out. So he was essentially forced to step aside, forced to release his delegates to, and now they're saying it's going to be just to Kamala Harris. So there's not going to be an open convention type situation, it seems, where you have a number of candidates competing for the votes. So the way we got here wasn't very democratic. Where we've ended up is not very democratic. It's not the same as, because the party doesn't have to follow democratic processes, and in different political eras, parties have nominated candidates in ways that were totally undemocratic, smoke-filled rooms. You can argue whether that was better or worse. In some sense, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are private organizations that can, pick whatever policies they want is their way of picking their candidate. Who gets to be host of Rising is not a democratic procedure. We don't have the viewers vote on it. It's, a decision that's made by the company, right? Because we're not obligated to follow democracy in all facets of all life. However, I would say at the same time they're running on this democracy is such a fundamental good. To have swapped out their guy in this manner, I think it raises my eyebrows, even if it's perfectly legal, and at the end of the day, of course, what they're going to do to maximize their chances of winning. Fair enough?
Yeah, they're following the legal democratic process, just like there will be a legal democratic process without any ballots cast to replace J.D. Vance in the Senate. If you're saying this is anti-democratic, that's ridiculous. She's on the ticket. People voted for her to become the vice president, knowing that if Joe Biden stepped aside, that she would either inherit all of the resources of the campaign, or if he stepped down as president, that she would become the president.
What?
He is the incumbent.
But he's not stepping down as
and
president. That would be a great argument if he did step down as president, but he's not doing that.
But I also just said she would inherit the resources because she's on the ticket in the campaign. They are running mates. They already won an election together before. That's how our electoral process works. He did win when she was on the ticket, the nomination for president with an actual primary process. I have disagreements with how the primary process goes, but they followed the legal process. The Democrats' stance on democracy being in peril is because Donald Trump wants to govern as if he is a king. He wants the executive branch to have absolute power. He doesn't care about people who are appointed to serve in positions, people who are elected to regulate those federal offices. The Department of Homeland Security is subject to the purview of Congress per the Constitution. They want to be able to say everything that happens in every branch of government. That's the kind of democracy that is at stake. If they actually cared about democratic processes, they would also care that there was not a popular vote electing, Donald Trump to be the president of the United States. They would also be upset about that. They would not like the Electoral College. They would not like that the primary process was unfair to Bernie Sanders. They don't care really about democracy. They're just using this to step on one of the Democrats' talking points.
I care that the primary process was unfair to Bernie Sanders. I agreed with that. I think the difference is, and I disagree with some of the policies you brought up in terms of what the Republicans are trying to do and whether that would be anti-democratic, but they're not running on the preservation of democracy to the same degree. They're running on correcting specific failed policies, immigration, the economy. I would say I want them to. I don't know if Trump's going to do this. I'm not personally a huge fan of Trump, nor do I really trust him to implement policies that I think would be good and that many conservatives want in terms of de-empowering the federal bureaucracy and returning more power to Congress or local authorities rather than having us be governed by a cabal of behind-the-scenes progressive administrators who hold on from administration to administration, like was laid bare during COVID when we found out that Fauci and the Centers for Disease Control can dictate policy from the highest offices in the country to local people everywhere without much Democratic input. That's what I'm worried about, and that's what I would like to see Trump reverse. I have no faith that he will reverse it because he was president and didn't, but certainly that's what many in the conservative movement are hoping Trump accomplishes. Democrats have just made so much about democracy itself, and I think this process I would say this process was not particularly democratic. That's fine. It's fine that it wasn't democratic. You're right that the delegates can make whatever decision that they want, and Joe Biden has released them to pick some candidate other than him. So it is all technically above board. However, it is being done at the behest of, the people were not all behind Joe Biden to begin with, but Kamala Harris only polls slightly better than him. We didn't have a process where we could have found out, well, maybe there's some Democrat out there who actually is really popular, who actually commands a lot of people. Maybe it's Bernie Sanders. Maybe it's someone like Bernie Sanders. We didn't do that. The
delegates can go and vote for whoever they want at the convention.
Yeah, but nobody's they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. Nobody's stepping up to actually say, you know what, I would like to run. Here's what I stand for. Here's the policies I think would be better for America. It's just all about how Donald Trump is so evil and pernicious. And we just read the polling, which showed Biden can't do it. So now it's going to be Kamala Harris. I think Democrats are going to be in for a little bit of a rude awakening when Kamala Harris hits the campaign trail and they find out, oh, this is a figure that has never excelled at campaigning on the national stage in the past. But maybe she'll surprise us and do a really good job. I think that's certainly conceivable. We'll just have to see.
We saw her do a great job campaigning last week in North Carolina, and I think that contributed to their decision to say, okay, we are going to endorse Kamala. That's going to be the official stance rather than an open convention where Joe Biden hasn't endorsed anyone. Now, the delegates that are going to vote in the convention, the majority of them are being sent with the people they represent having voted for Joe Biden. It's very likely they'll vote for, Joe Biden's endorsed candidate. But as he said in his speech, the democratic process is that the delegates can vote for whoever they want. He acknowledged that before Kamala even dropped out. And so we're at a point in time where the polling was popular among Democrats and people in the country that they wanted Joe Biden to drop out. So this narrative that it's just the elites that want this is a ridiculous talking point, in my opinion.
I think you're right. The people were not sold on Joe Biden in the first place, but it's the elites changing their attitude. The elites were for Biden, and they they betrayed him, and that's why he's not the nominee. You're right that the people were not. This isn't being done over the people's objections. It's not like the people are, like on the Republican side, the equivalent would be, Trump, who his people are absolutely behind. What if, as a result of the conviction, somehow they did some behind-the-scenes, high-level Republican Mitch McConnell scheming process to have the delegates select Nikki Haley instead of Donald Trump? That would be the equivalent of a kind of coup here. So that would be different because the Republicans, the base, is totally behind Trump. I agree with you that there's not that same level of commitment to Biden from the base. People, in fact, a majority of Democrats were very unsure about him running for re-election, given his age. But the party leadership was all behind him, and the media was all behind him, and they have turned on him, and that's what caused him to exit. He didn't exit because the people were not for him in the first place, in which we never would have gotten. Like, if the people had been listened to, we would never have even gotten to this point. So that's why I think the narrative that it's an elite thing is going to take hold. But I agree with you that it's not. It's more complicated than that, because this is not being done over the wishes. The wishes of the people are not being invalidated, but the will of the elites is actually what is triumphing on the Democratic side, because they changed their mind. I would say it that way.
Yeah, I think there are probably some people that are Republicans that are upset that the elites that wanted Donald Trump to not win the nomination.
Yeah, they lost.
They wanted someone else. I think those elites, because they lost, which was not all of the elites in the Republican Party, but some of them, because they lost their battle to oust Trump, they're jealous that the elites that pushed Joe Biden out, with the support of most Democrats and most people in America, that they were successful in their efforts. And that's real democracy. That Joe Biden, just because his ego wants him to be the nominee, that's not enough in a democratic system. If your party doesn't support you and if the people don't support you, you shouldn't run again.
Real democracy was on display in the Republican primaries this time around, where the elites were desperate to have the elites and conservative media desperate for anyone but Trump. Give us Ron DeSantis. Give us Nikki Haley. Give us Chris Christie. Anyone. And the voters decided democratically, no, we want Trump again. Trump is our man. We're sticking by him. We don't care. They told the elites to go take a hike, and they got Trump, and they made them bow down and bend the knee to him. And it was the voice of the people on the Republican side that has guaranteed Donald Trump is still the candidate, despite the wishes of the elites. I think it's an interesting contrast.
The guy that cut corporate taxes so much that we saw corporate profits increase 50%. That's a man of the people.
Well, we can cut. Well, he's going to cut taxes for the people who make tips as well. We're going to cut taxes for everyone. Corporations, people.
He didn't say he'd cut taxes for everyone, though, now, did he?
He said he was going to cut. You heard this tip?
Waiters and bartenders are not everyone.
Well, I think I don't speak for the Republican Party. I want to cut taxes for everybody.
His plan has middle-class tax cuts and working-class tax cuts, which were a smaller margin than the corporate tax cuts, expiring in December of 2025. And we have not heard a new plan of what's going to happen.
I would like to see them cut taxes for absolutely everybody, but maybe we can dig into that at a later date, what specifically the tax plans are, because that does it for us today on Rising. It was a lot of fun to be back in the chair to discuss these exciting developments with you, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here.
Robbie.
Things keep happening. That is certainly one way of putting it.
Be sure to like.
Go ahead.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. Lots of stuff happening. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, we are available wherever you get your podcasts.
And we will be back here tomorrow. We presume as of tomorrow it will still be Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, but who knows? Anything can happen. See you then.
Bye, y'all.